Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Raising Bulls, brought to you by the Beautiful Game Network, Golden Goal Press, and Roughneck Scarves. We are the only podcast dedicated to the New York Red Bulls 2 of USL Championship. Tonight, we're going to recap a very big win over a slightly shorthanded Birmingham Legion FC. Retribution for canceling the game due to weather concerns, I guess. We will talk to Sebastian Elney, first year striker for the Red Bulls. We had a great talk with him earlier, and we're going to preview the match against Ottawa Fury FC at the most obvious hour of the day, 10:30 a.m. on a Wednesday. Because once again, I think it's camp day up there in Canada. Joining me tonight, you know him, you love him, it's Joe Steen. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I think, is this 3 weeks in a row that you've been on the show?
It is 3 weeks. It is 3 weeks in a row.
We're recording at better times for you now.
Yeah, no, it's much easier now, which is good.
Good.
But another dominant win at home on this past week. So that sees them go to, first in the table and, prepare for a quick 2-game road trip before they come back home.
Yeah, and let's talk about the fact that, and we've seen this before, when they loan down a lot of first-team guys, it tends to be a little bit tricky. Not the case again here. Both Etienne and Ivan were just electric the other night. I thought that, especially Ivan, his passing was on a completely other level, and I was glad to see him get rewarded with some time with the first team this week. And Jorgensen, I thought, had, not a terrific game, but certainly his best game so far with Red Bull 2 or Red Bull. And another goal from Tom Barlow. That guy, he just steps onto the field for seconds, scores a goal, and all is well in the world.
Yeah, credit to Derek for, you mentioned him and Ivan. Credit to Derek for reading a bad back pass and opening the scoring. And I definitely think that gave him some confidence this weekend, where he made a huge impact on the game coming on as a sub. But I think the big thing in this game is about Matthias Jorgensen, because we've I think a lot of expectations been placed on him because, he was, hyped up when he was brought in and everything. And I don't really think he's settled in just yet. But, and I was one of those people who thought maybe, some time with the USL team to get him, used to the style, used to how they play, and integrate him a little bit instead of just throwing him right into the fire with the first team. And this game, you really saw what he's about, which, was really good. 2 very nice finishes. I thought his movement was great. And I really was impressed with him, which, and also getting confidence with, the Red Bull 2 could, help, like we saw with Derek on Saturday, could help him with, the first team.
Yeah, not to get off a track of speaking about Jorgensen, because I would like to continue talking about him, but I think Etienne might be the first player in the history of these two clubs of USL MLS partnership that has been going on over the last 4 or 5 seasons. I think he's the first player to score a winning goal for both teams in the same week.
Oh man, that's crazy when you think about it. He scores on Wednesday and then scores a game winner. Credit to him, because he's put in. You could tell with especially watching him with the reserve team, he's put in a lot of hard work.
Yeah,
this season has started. And just because of the abundance of wingers that they have on the first team, it's been hard for some of the guys to break in. But I was really happy to see him score, read that bad back pass score, and then, score, the game winner on Saturday too. So with a player like him, you really see what this organization's all about as far as, integrating everybody.
Yeah, and you look, all the guys that we mentioned at the top of that, Jorgensen, Etienne, and Ivan, they have all spent time under the sort of air of angry Red Bull fans who feel like they're not living up to what they should be. All 3 guys had tremendous weeks, and hopefully they can continue that progress. Getting back to Matthias Jorgensen, One of the things that I think he struggled with at times in this match was getting himself on the ball, checking back, combining with his teammates. But we continue to see the best of what he does, and that's reading those lanes, running the channels, pulling out defenders, opening up space. And what we got to see this week, which we hadn't before, is his ability to read sort of those second ball chances that are going to pop up in the box, and his patience in terms of waiting on the run. His first goal, a beautiful pass from Etienne, just delicately chipped in, but it relies entirely on Matthias reading that pass coming from Etienne and just timing it perfectly. So great to see him do what he was doing. And yes, he still has a ways to go, I think, in terms of the way that the strikers who have played for Red Bull 2 go this season. Obviously, Tom Barlow is at the tippity top. Brian White, obviously, he didn't have a ton of time, but very close in that conversation of who was the better striker. He's obviously being rewarded with MLS minutes because of Bradley's injury. And then Jorgensen is still kind of trying to find his way, but he's swiftly moving up that list. And I think if he continues to put in performances like this, it's a matter of time before we start seeing him with the first team again.
Yeah, I can't disagree on that. I mean, if you put in the hard work with Red Bull 2, you're rewarded with first team minutes, as we've seen. And, the biggest, like you mentioned, the biggest case of that is Brian White, who's I think he's put in some great minutes with the first team in these last few games with Bradley being injured. And, he had to wait for his chance, but he's making the most of it right now.
Yeah. Other notables from this game, Ryan Mera gets his second start for Red Bull 2. Again, gets another shutout in a hugely lopsided victory. He didn't have a ton to do in this game, but he did make some nice saves when he was called upon. Sean Nealis gets his first goal, technically his first professional goal because he did score in the preseason, but obviously that does not count towards his total. We talked to him after the match and failed to mention it. Sean, if you're listening, we blew it on that one. We were too concerned with how well you guys did in the back. We didn't even think about talking about that goal, but congrats on getting it. We're very proud of you. Hopefully we'll have you on the show soon, and you can tease us about it or something. The only other thing I think really to look at in this match, Kofi coming off of what I thought was his best performance last week, not a great one this week. I think it is a little bit of a step back. His passing really wasn't crisp. He was okay defensively, but I think he was raising the bar with each performance, and this was just a step back. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because him playing with Lima so much, I think it was a little bit of an adjustment this game. A little bit of the different formation too. So I think it was a little tough adjusting to that for him. But I mean, it seems like he hasn't gotten to what he's capable of yet. It seems like we're getting, one performance or another from him. It's more of, I just think I think the biggest thing with him, and I've talked about this a couple times this year, is just finding consistency.
Yeah.
And that's something that, it's his first year with this team. Maybe we'll see it more often as the season goes on, because right now, I mean, like you said, last game I thought he was excellent, probably one of the best players in the field. Last week, not so great, but I mean, in a game where they won 5-0, I mean, I think a performance like that can be thrown by the wayside, because I think everybody else played so well that a lot of people aren't going to notice it too much.
Exactly, and you hit the nail on the head. It's all about consistency for him. I think in a lot of ways he reminds me of how Christian Caceres started with the second team last year. It took a little while for him to consistently put in the performances that we came to expect from him by the end of the season. And I think Kofi's in the same kind of place. It's a new environment, new things to sort of adjust to. And I think it's a matter of time. Let's talk man of the match. Who you got?
Easy for me. Matthias Jorgensen has 2 goals and looks like the player we are hoping him become with the first team.
Okay, I think that's fair. I'm going to give mine to Derek Etienne, getting the team started with the goal. Really, on the night, he was just fantastic. He had the assists as well that we mentioned. And, I think those are two worthy choices. Derek, Matthias. Tiny little bit of Red Bull 2 news before we take a break and go to our interview. The Red Bulls have finally added some goalkeeping depth that is not the academy to the roster, which, look, I have no problem with academy players being there, but I think mostly that was just insurance. Finally, Rashid Nuhu, he was the 70th overall selection for Red Bulls in the Super Draft. He's finally signed. It took a little time for him to actually get the signature done and his inclusion in the team done, but he's been around in training all this time. I've seen him at the practice facility, so not that big of a surprise to see him finally get that contract. And then they also brought in a fellow Venezuelan, Miguel Silva. He played at a team that Caceres played at, Deportiva La Guerra. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, I apologize tremendously. And he also played at Metropolitanos in Venezuela with Edgardo Rito. So there seems to be sort of a Venezuelan pipeline, no pun intended, opening up to the Red Bulls too. They're bringing in a lot of these young Venezuelan players, although I guess Edgardo Rito isn't exactly young. But that could be a really sort of talent-rich vein, and something that I know Red Bulls MLS fans really want to have, a steady crop of young South American talents. And Venezuela is one of those places that I think maybe doesn't get the respect that it deserves because of the other teams in the region, and has players that are more than capable of adding tremendous value to the team.
Yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, it seems like every league has like a pipeline where they try and look for players from certain countries and stuff like that. And like you mentioned, you've had Rito and Caceres from basically two teams that, he's played on. And, I think they've liked what they like what they saw from Caceres and figured, hey, why not? Let's, keep trying to bring some of these guys in from that might, may not be well known. And, we could possibly find some really good players.
Yeah. And hopefully we get to see some of that from him. Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for him to get into the 18. But he's a young player. He's a talented player, and should he get his chance, I think it'll be really interesting to see what he can bring. Last thing I want to talk about before we go to break, looking at the power rankings for this week for USL. I know it doesn't really matter. I know, but still, here I am looking at them. St. Louis finally drops down out of first place. Up top right now, the Tampa Bay Rowdies. They are 4-0-5. Yes, they are undefeated, but they have 5 draws. For some reason, that keeps them at the top of the power rankings. Joe, I think this is crazy. They got a point against Indy, but that was sort of a maybe a gut check isn't exactly the right thing. But I'm more impressed that Indy got a point out of that game than I am with Tampa Bay, being that they were a man up for so much of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I just don't understand the team. I get it, they're undefeated, but it's not like, Red Bulls 2 had one clunker against Loudoun, and that's it. I mean, other than that, they've blown teams out. They didn't get a road win until October last year, and they got one in their first game of the year. So I don't quite understand what they're looking for. It's not as if that, and they beat Indy 11, which Tampa Bay did not do. Right. So I don't quite understand. I mean, I guess I understand that they're undefeated, but I would put the hottest team on top of the power rankings instead of the team that's undefeated, personally.
You would think so. And I will temper what I've said, and I do believe that they should be at the top of the power rankings, But if there's one thing that you could really say against them at this point, it's that the teams that are in the bottom 6 spots, 4 of them have been responsible for, the Red Bulls have 4 wins against those bottom 6 teams. So, all right, I'll give it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt treatment, but I mean, they've been so good to start the year. They're leading the USL in scoring. Tom Barlow is in the lead for Golden Boot. They're leading in chance created per game, and big chances created per game. So I think it's a matter of time before they're at the top, but a little bit silly that they're not right now. Anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Sebastian Elney, so stick around. And we're back. We are joined now by another first-timer to the show. We're covering all the young guys. We had Reese, we had Janos. Tonight we have Sebastian Elney. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
So, first year with the USL side, you had some time in the U23s, but let's rewind all the way back. Tell me a little bit about when you first started playing.
So I just started playing soccer, like, last the room, basically. My dad always kept the ball around, and I'd kick it around, and ever since I can remember, I think I started playing in leagues when I was 6, which was a little behind everyone else, but, and then from there, like age 6, I played with a club called Boynton Beach Knights, and it was just like a small recreational, like AYSO soccer kind of thing. And then from there, I eventually went to Birmingham United at like age 14. And then from there, basically when I joined Birmingham United, started getting like national team call-ups and really started like seeing the world of soccer and whatnot.
Yeah. And
then, let's see. And so I would play for Birmingham United. That was my freshman year. And then the next year, my sophomore year, I went to a residency with the U17 national team. Junior year, I came back home. I went back to Boca High and played high school soccer and with Birmingham United again. And then my senior year, we decided it was the best move for me to go to Philadelphia Union and play for the academy.
So I guess I want to start with the residency for a little bit. What was that experience like? I have talked to a few of the guys who have been through it, but I don't think I've ever really touched on the details of it. Was it sort of a whirlwind because it's kind of a short stint, and then you're back to your club team?
Yeah, it was definitely a great experience. Like, there's so much that I learned from the experience and took a lot from it. So they took us away from my club team, but even when I'd be back home for breaks or like a few days, I would go and train with Birmingham United or even playing games with Birmingham United. And so I was still kind of involved in both, but spent most of my days obviously with like at the residency program.
Right. And who were some of your teammates while you were there?
Chris Lemma, Evan Laurel.
Oh, so scrubs.
Sorry?
I said so some scrubs, huh?
No.
No, those are good guys, obviously.
A lot of ballers down there.
And then up to Philly for your senior year in high school? That's what you said? And what was that experience like for you?
It was a bit different than residency, but it was also like another really cool experience I really enjoyed.
And while you were there, I realized it's again a kind of a short window because it's just that senior year. But what were your expectations while you were there? did you start to see the path to the pros, or was it's sort of biding time until you ended up going to college?
Well, I always had college in mind. I always wanted to go to college and play soccer in college and whatnot. But the opportunity I had with Philly was a great opportunity. And even when I trained with the academy, at the time that I played there, I would practice with the first team and whatnot, be around those kind of players, see the quality of play that I was up to. And even I went to preseason with the first team, like probably in January, like down in Clearwater. And that was also like a really cool experience in my time there. And I took a lot from that too. And it was just like, it was definitely eye-opening in a way and insightful.
So it sounds like, you did a lot of moving around from team to team and going in the residency, going in the academy, playing with the pros down in Florida. Was that at all difficult as a young guy, or did that kind of help acclimate you to your experiences now?
Yeah, definitely helped acclimate me to the experiences now. So 4 different high schools in 4 years, like four different cities. And then, from Boca, Bradenton, and back to Boca, and then Philadelphia. So there's a lot of moving. I would say my freshman year I was at home, and then moving to residency was really the first time out of the house, and I'd say that was probably the first struggle I'd had to go through of any sort, of being homesick and whatnot. But then from there, it just proved to be very essential to the future and the path I've been on.
Right.
Because from there, it just made every move or transition easier, where I could just be able to switch on, focus on my soccer rather than other things that's impacting it,
Mm-hmm. When did Maryland first either catch your eye, or did you catch their eye?
I definitely was aware of the program and the standard of it, and how big the name Maryland soccer was in college soccer growing up, and just from hearing things and looking at NCAA tournaments and whatnot, you always saw Maryland and whatnot, big time players. And so I definitely was a fan. And then I'd say my junior year, my junior year at Boca High is when I started getting offers. And I got a few really big offers.
Mm-hmm.
But also I really wanted to check out Maryland. And then finally a few months of kind of waiting around and seeing, and I was more focused on playing at Birmingham United at the time, and kind of put college on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
But Maryland reached out. An assistant coach reached out, and it's funny because when I saw the message, I saw the Maryland flag in the profile picture. So before I even saw the name, I already knew what was happening. It was just a real big feeling. And I'd say my senior year, when I was at Philadelphia, I picked up an injury, which allowed me to go and take my visits.
Oh.
And I went to. So I actually committed my senior year fall semester. Which is pretty late.
Yeah.
Which was later than everyone else, but with all the moving and whatnot, it was tough to really, settle down and pick a school. So in Philly, we had games and we'd have off on the weekends, and so I was able to take my official visits.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Maryland first, and once I stepped foot on campus, I kind of knew that's where I wanted to go. And after the visit, I fell in love with the place. I called my parents, and I was like, I'm going here. I don't need to go to this school.
Right.
And the parents, of course, were go, you got to see them. And so I went, but as soon as the visits were done, I called Sash and said I want to be a Terp.
And like you said, that's a really big time program there, and you had a really good run, right? You managed to get onto some sort of big 10 selections, and you won a national championship. What was that all like?
It was like a dream come true. It was everything I could have wanted in my college experience and more.
And I mean, when you set out there on your Maryland profile, it says you came to Maryland to win national championships, and you did it. Was that a surreal feeling when the final?
It was so surreal.
Yeah. The other thing,
definitely, yeah.
The other thing in your profile, which I think is pretty great, it says that you want to own a Chipotle. Is that still a dream of yours?
Back in high school, I was a real big fan of Chipotle. It's settled a bit, but if I could franchise Chipotle, that'd be kind of cool.
There you go. So that brings us up to your time with the Red Bulls. You spent time with the U23s a little bit, right? I'm sure that you were under the impression that you were on their radar, and then you came into preseason. Obviously, things went pretty well, and now you're with the team.
Yeah, preseason was great. I actually didn't spend time with the Red Bull.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Oh. Whoops.
It's all good.
Okay, well then, how did you end up catching the Red Bull's eye? When did you know of their interest in you?
I'd say right after the draft ended. I got a call and just organized thing for me to head on up for preseason and see how things go from there.
And obviously, they went pretty well. You had an experience.
Yeah, they're going pretty well.
You had an experience with the Union for preseason. Contrast that a little bit about with your experience that you had this past off season with the Red Bulls out in Arizona.
Yeah. So with Philly, I was down there for I think 2 weeks. And I mean, I was 17 at the time, a little bit scrawnier, a little bit shorter, but I saw that I could handle myself with the pros, and like my game could translate into the professional game. And so I would say having that experience just definitely helped, because I knew what preseason camp, kind of consists of, and like how good of a shape you have to be going into it, just because you're practicing every day, learning hard every day. And so that definitely helped, but I really enjoyed the preseason with the Red Bulls this past, 2 months ago.
And you've obviously since made your debut. You're a little bit unlucky in that, Tom Barlow is playing so well right now. They've been loaning down a lot of guys from the first team, but, I imagine that you're still going through a lot of the acclimating to the team and kind of, setting your expectations, and they have their expectations set. Do you have specific goals that you're looking for this season?
Specifically, I would just say to contribute in the best way, any way I can. Obviously, team goals just is to, develop players and win games. And so that's always the focus at the end of the day.
I think that's very, very fair. Before I let you go, are you ready for the lightning round?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, popcorn, yes or no?
Sorry?
Popcorn, yes or no?
Yes.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Neither.
I think that's 2 in a row now. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Super Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog?
Super Mario.
Who is your favorite team to play as in FIFA?
Probably Real Madrid.
Okay. And I'm calling this the Derek Etienne Award. Who is the worst dancer on the Red Bulls 2?
Worst dancer on Red Bull 2? Oh, man, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to throw it in the bus.
No suggestions?
Worst dancer?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
Are there several that could be in the running for this?
No, no one comes to mind.
Okay.
Great dancer.
All right. I'll let you off the hook on that one. Sebastian, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you.
And when we come back, we're going to preview the game at Ottawa, so stick around. And we're back with our final segment. I believe that I did say earlier that Sebastian Elney was a fun interview. I hope you guys all agree. I'm a little disappointed that he wouldn't throw anyone under the bus as the worst dancer on the team, but so it goes, as Vonnegut would say. Let's turn our attention to a weird early morning match against Ottawa Fury. It's 10:30 a.m. I believe it's camp day. There was a similar situation last year. Ottawa Fury FC, they play at TD Place. They are 3-2-1 on the season with a +1 goal differential, 3-2-0 in their last 5 games, and 2-1-0 at home. They have wins in their last 5 over Atlanta, Loudoun, and Birmingham. Their 2 losses come to Nashville and Louisville City. So, not a lot that we can necessarily draw from that. They beat some teams that are lower down in the table. They lost to teams that are higher up in the table. This sounds like a very Ottawa-type mid-table season, but we're going to have to see how things progress, obviously. Their leaders in goals scored, Kevin Oliveira with 2, Maurice Sam, Carl Howarth, Cristiano Francois, former Rochester Rhino and Pittsburgh Riverhound, and Thomas Millier-Guigier, I believe I said that right, all have 1 goal. Assists from Carl Howarth with 2, Sam, Wall Fall, another ex-Rochester guy, and Kevin Oliveira all have 1. I am going to admit now, I have not watched any Ottawa games. I am going in blind on this one. Joe, walk us through what to expect on Wednesday morning.
Well, I would expect just a classic Red Bulls 2 Ottawa game, which is a lot of counterattacking. This team is very tough to break down. They have frustrated Red Bull 2. Red Bull 2 only have, in the 6 times these 2 teams have met, they only have 1 win against them. They've either conceded late and lost these games, or they've conceded late and drawn these games, or like last year, I believe at Montclair, they just got taken apart and counterattacked every time. Every time Ottawa went up the field, they were dangerous. So, to me, they haven't. They did lose to Louisville and they lost to Nashville, but they are still a good mid-table side in USL, and because of how they've given problems to Red Bull 2 in the past, I can definitely see them doing it again on Wednesday. Yeah,
and look, that's the kind of team that has traditionally done well against the Red Bulls, teams that can stay compact, that can counterattack. I think this season you've seen Red Bull 2 a little bit better in terms of breaking down defenses that are going to bunker, but still, it's always a concern going on the road playing against sort of a tactically disciplined team at home. Early in the morning is sort of a weird disadvantage. I don't know if it's necessarily a disadvantage for these guys, because who knows when they wake up and get their day started. I don't want to play soccer at 10:30 in the morning, but
it's a weird time to play. That's how I would describe it. It's very strange. It's a very strange time. I think they played this type of game last year and they drew 0-0.
It was.
I think it was a lot.
It was a 0-0 draw.
And it was a lot of first team players mixed in too as well.
That's correct. And credit where credit is due. Former Ottawa goalkeeper Maxime Crépeau had a phenomenal game last year during camp day. that really is the only reason that this was a draw. Red Bulls could have had 2 or 3 goals in that match. And you mentioned it in terms of where Ottawa has done very well against the Red Bulls, and it seems like every time they meet, something happens towards the end of the match that tips it in Ottawa's favor. They finally got that first win, though, towards the end of last year. I'm expecting to see a very similar lineup to what we saw, not against Birmingham, but the week before. I think Tom Barlow should be back up top. Maybe Jorgensen is still with this team. I'm not really sure. Red Bulls 1 also have a match on Wednesday. Red Bulls 1. You don't refer to the first movie in a trilogy as one, but whatever. So they've got a game on Wednesday night against Montreal. Knowing that Bradley is probably still out for that match, maybe they want to keep Jorgensen with the first team, which I think is good. I'd like to see him get some more minutes in that match. That opens the door for Amarildo. That opens the door for tonight's guest, Sebastian Elney, who I think deserves some minutes after showing really well early in the season and just kind of being unlucky in terms of being behind guys like Barlow and White and Amarildo. And I think everybody else, you really know what you're going to get out there. But the question is, can they put another performance in on the road like they did earlier in the season?
I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think this team seems to be different than last year's teams. I think that first road win against Charlotte, who is a very good attacking-minded team, this team showed a lot after going down early in that game and getting a couple quick goals, and then for the most part playing a pretty good game the rest of the way. So the fact that this team doesn't score a lot of goals, I think helps this team out because they don't really have to worry too much about any danger up front or anything like that, and they can kind of play their style. But I don't know. So it's tough because the time of the game I think is going to play a little bit of a factor. The fact they've had, but I also think that the fact that they've had a week off is going to play a big factor because they've early on in the season especially they've been rotating heavily. Yeah. So I think this team can definitely put in a performance that is relative to the first performance against Charlotte. They're just going to have to stay disciplined and just make sure that there's constant communication along that back line. This way there's no mistakes.
Okay, let's get a prediction.
I'm going to say a 1-0 win, and Tom Barlow's going to have the goal.
I feel like that's a pretty safe bet. Tom Barlow will have a goal. 1-0 maybe a little less safe. Without Ryan Mira in goal, or Mera, they have not been able to keep a shutout, so that would be their first with Evan Loro or Rashid Nuhu or Miguel. Oh, I forgot his last name. I'm so sorry. You're new to the team. I don't have it down yet. But somebody's going to be in goal. Let's see if they can get a shutout.
I kind of hope Evan has a shutout. I think he's earned it. I feel bad that Mira's come down twice and they've had a shutout for him both times.
Yeah, right. I'm going to call this a 2-1 victory for the Red Bulls. I think they will give up a goal, but I think they should be able to handle Ottawa and what they're going to bring. Before we talk about USL stuff, I had a couple of questions for you, mostly related to a lot of the chatter during the week. Tom Barlow, 8 goals on the season now. Really, really impressing everyone that's watched this team so far. How long do you think it'll be before we start hearing the murmurs getting louder? Is he somebody who signs with New York Red Bulls in the summer? Well, I guess he's with the team, so I think he can be loaned up at any time. But do you think that he's earning the MLS contract this summer?
That's a good question. I'm going to say, yeah, I think it's going to be a similar situation to Brian White where he earns it, but I think that he won't necessarily see too many minutes right away. But I think he's going to, I think if he continues to perform at this level, he's going to earn it a lot sooner rather than later, I should say.
And should he sign with the MLS version of the Red Bulls, this will be, I think, the deepest core of strikers that they've had for a long, long time. You have Bradley Wright Phillips, Brian White, Matthias Jorgensen, and then presumably Tom Barlow. That's a young and inexperienced, but a very talented group. So that could be very, very interesting. And maybe Bradley takes on sort of the Miyagi mentor role for everybody. The other thing I want to ask you about is on the back line. We've now seen, sort of permutations on the outside with everybody who's playing those roles. Janos Luba, Alan Yanis, Edgardo Rito, and Reese Buckmaster. I think, when you look at that group... I'm definitely forgetting somebody. Who am I forgetting?
Giannis?
No, I already said Giannis. There's somebody else on the left, I thought.
I can't remember. Who is it?
I got Luba. I got Buckmaster. Whatever. But of that group...
Rito? No, it's not Rito.
No, I got Rito too.
I can't think right now.
I'm going to pretend to think, but I'm going to look it up.
Okay.
So of the group that we've seen so far, I think coming into the season, Alan Yanis seemed like the guy who would be starting, and he's definitely been replaced a little bit in this lineup. I was just wondering, if you're picking two guys to hold down the wings going forward, who are the two guys out of that group?
I think Buckmaster has to be one of them.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm going to give it to Edgardo Rito. I think he's actually put in some good minutes, and I like him going forward.
Wow. I'm a little bit surprised, I got to say. But I agree. He's done really, really well for this team. It'll be interesting to see who does indeed end up there. Well, we also saw Kyle Duncan, but he's not really on this team.
Yeah, he's not.
He's a first-team player. Okay, let's look at the standings before we do anything else. Up top in the Eastern Conference, I think maybe for the second time this season, New York Red Bulls 2, 19 points in 8 games. They have failed to pick up maximum points in just 2 games this season. They are rocking and rolling. It's way too early to talk USL Championship, but look out Eastern Conference. Below them, with 17 points, St. Louis FC, dropping from number 1. Then Tampa Bay Rowdies, the last undefeated team in USL. Oh, nope, sorry, Fresno is also still undefeated. North Carolina FC under them with 15 points. Then Charleston Battery with 15. Nashville, Indy, both have 14. Then Louisville City at 13. Beth Steel, 11. Birmingham Legion, 11. Then under the line, Pittsburgh Riverhounds, Ottawa Fury, Atlanta United 2, Loudoun United, Memphis 901 FC. That to me is the biggest surprise right now. They've not won in quite a while. Charlotte Independence, Swope Park Rangers, and Hartford Athletic, who picked up their first points the other day. Woo! They got them against Charlotte. Not a world beater, but congrats Hartford on your first professional points. Looking at the teams under the line, I mentioned Memphis as my big surprise because I thought they were better than their record. They've played the most games in the Eastern Conference. 1 win, 6 losses, 3 draws. Not great. Kind of feeling a little bit bad for them. Still pretty unbalanced down there. You've got Loudoun and Swope Park have only played 7 games. Ottawa, this week's opponent, has only played 6 games so far, so who knows what to make of that so far. But what's your big surprise right now? What's your big surprise at the top of the table, and then we'll talk about the bottom.
Nashville not being there is probably my biggest surprise. I think they've struggled quite a bit, and like we talked about, it's more about their chemistry up front.
Yeah.
But I think them not being there is probably my biggest surprise.
And look, they're not that far off. Yes, they're 6th place, but they are only 5 points out of first, so it's still very early. But yeah, they're kind of like this year's Tampa Bay, although Tampa Bay went through a horrid stretch last year. I don't think that Nashville is necessarily going to have something like that happen to them. but we definitely had higher expectations heading into the season. They haven't met them. Okay, bottom of the table. What's your biggest surprise?
Swell Park. I think it's been very shocking how bad they've translated to the East.
Okay. I'm not necessarily surprised by that, but I can understand that.
I think they have a lot of talent, and I think they were a playoff team in the West, and they're basically at the bottom of the table in the East. So that's quite a drop.
Yeah. All right. Fair. Pittsburgh Riverhounds are having a very Bob Lilly season. They are 2-1-5. They will draw all day long, and they'll be happy about it. I think they'll make the playoffs. I don't see them being under the line for too long. Out west, New Mexico United still up top, 17 points. Then Tulsa, 15 points. Portland, 15. OKC, LA, they both have 14. Fresno and Reno both have 13. Orange County, Rio Grande Valley, and El Paso Locomotive with 12. Under the line, Las Vegas Lights, almost there. They're only a point back. They got to make the playoffs this year. I'm telling you. Sac Republic,
playoffs
11 points. Yeah. Real Monarchs, 11. Pretty much everyone under number 10. So from 11 to 15, they've all got 11 points. They're all 1 point back. So not that big of a deal. Then San Antonio, 10 points at 16th. Then Colorado Springs Switchbacks and Tacoma Defiance. Tacoma is rocking and rolling, 5 straight losses. Their closest match over that run is a 2-1 loss to OKC Energy. The rest of these matches, this is just atrocious. 4-0 to Orange County, 5-0 to Las Vegas, 4-0 to Phoenix, and 3-0 to San Antonio. Ooh, doggy. They are negative 23 goal differential. Negative 23.
To say they've been bad is an understatement. They're last year's Tulsa.
Yeah, it is just astoundingly bad. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. There's not really anything you can say. They're in a bad spot. They've played 10 matches. They are averaging 2.8 goals conceded per match. Yikes is right. On the other end of that, Red Bulls have had, they haven't been keeping shutouts, but 9 goals in 9 games. Not bad. Not bad at all.
Much improved from last year.
Yes. Tampa Bay, so this is really where it comes in for them having the spot on the power rankings as high as they are. They've only given up 4 goals this season. That's pretty impressive. Yeah,
they've definitely upped. I would say their backline's gotten a lot better from where it was last year because they were leaking goals left and right towards the end of the season.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Jason Johnson. He has been very good for Phoenix this year. He is now ruled out for the next several months with a lower body injury suffered in their last match. I'm not really sure what lower body injury means, but that's a big loss for that club.
Yeah, I mean, they have the depth to get by, I think, without him for a little bit, but they're definitely going to feel his loss, especially, with the big goals he's come up with for them time and time again since being at that club.
Yeah. It is a sad thing, and we hope that you recover nicely, Jason, and hopefully that time will fly by for you. We got some other encouraging news today. Florian Valot, not obviously full training, but back training, rehabbing from his second ACL injury in the last 2 years. But it's just good to see him up and about and working, and hopefully he's back on the field sooner rather than later and remains healthy for a little bit.
Yeah, it's been such an important. I mean, he was so good coming up to the first team last year, and then since then it's just been unlucky with injuries. But yeah. I mean, it's good to see him back. I mean, hopefully he recovers well and he gets back to the flow we all know.
Yeah. You've been doing the ex-New York Red Bulls 2 report. Any interesting things that we should know about from those guys?
I really like Zico Lewis. Just seemed to have found a really good home in Charleston this year. He's playing very well. Had a goal and an assist this weekend in their draw. All the Tampa Bay guys have been contributing pretty sound minutes. Junior Flemings has been tearing it up in Phoenix this year. Jose Aganaga is contributing some important minutes there too. Stefano Bonomo has been getting into the team at Sacramento Republic, which is good to see. There's been a lot of those guys seem to be finding good homes on other teams and getting quality minutes.
That's because the Red Bulls are bosses when it comes to player development. They're doing a really great job. That brings us to the end of another episode of Raising Bulls. That one flew by. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, I am at _Joe Goldstein.
I am at JSteen15.
And if you'd like to follow the show, and we hope you do, we are at Raising Bull Cast. That's one bull, Raising Bull Cast. And of course, that's on Twitter. You can also follow our work at Red Bulls News Network, rbnn.us on the interwebs, and RB News Network on Twitter. You can find us at facebook.com/raisingbulls. You can go to raisingbulls.com, where we post all of our episodes. You can even send questions to Raising Bulls at questions@raisingbulls.com. Did you know that? Sure you did. You've been listening to the show for a while. You've got an idea of how to get in touch with us. You send us questions on Twitter if you don't feel like emailing. Is it too hard to open up the email? Maybe. I hate sending emails. Send us questions on Twitter. We'll answer them. You can find us at iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If we're not there, let us know. We will get onto that platform. We're going to hustle. And you guys should too. Rate us, review us, find us. It helps. Every bit helps. Please, guys. We, of course, are part of the BGN family at the Beautiful Game Network, bgn.fm, covering MLS, USL, Premier League, and NWSL. They have a host of great shows. I'm going to start at the bottom of the list and work my way up. Tornado Alley, The Unused Substitute, Texas Soccer Radio, St. Louis Soccer Report, Old Glory, Red Report, Down in the Valley, 1868 Weekly, Play the Kids, Mongols, and so much more. They've got great podcasts. They've got great written content by a host of great hosts and writers. Go there. They've got a lot of great stuff. You want to stay up on USL? They are the place to do that. Of course, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Golden Goal Press, the best choice for you to get custom shirts, hats, mugs, and other items for just yourself or your organization. Check out their amazing products at a fraction of the price of other places at goldengoalpress.com. And of course, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. For myself, for Joe Steen, and Sebastian Elney, thank you very much and have a great night.
Woo.
Okay, Ric Flair.